I'm here with Christian from Gamereactor Germany, and he sort of knew like this room. I don't know really what it is, but it's kind of creepy. And he let me in here to talk about, of all things, Borderlands 2, because we are at a Borderlands preview event, I guess.
In London.
In London, yes. So we just had a couple of hours with the game, both of us, and give me your impressions.
Well, first of all, yesterday evening I threw in the old game to have an impression about how it will look, and it actually looks a lot better than the old game. That's the first thing I can say instantly. It's extremely colorful. They really chosen the whole color palette to give us a lot of new enemies. There's so much variation in this game in terms of enemies. I don't know what you feel about it.
Yeah, that's definitely it. Again, when talking about the graphics, it's still cel shaded, but to me at least, it seems like the big, thick black lines that you had that was defining everything in the first game kind of has gotten smaller. While it's still cel shaded, and you will not be in doubt about that, it's much more detailed than before. And as you were just mentioning, that also goes into the variation, both in the levels themselves, which just, I mean, we got to play 2 levels, and the first of the 2 levels I played, which wasn't the caverns, but the other one I can't remember.
Yeah, the wildlife exploitation,
preservatory, something like that. I just experienced that like you went from cliffside into like grasslands, into a factory, out of the factory to some docks, and just
plus the light always changing constantly from day to night in a very like good tempo as well. So you don't really see it instantly, but it's just a perfect tempo of the way the levels change with the day and light, and all the opponents. So it's like it just feels new every second, pretty much.
And again, it's the sort of thing that while I did notice it in the first Borderlands, I was way too happy to just blow everything apart, that it really didn't bother me. But now playing the sequel, I think I'm gonna have a hard time going back to the very like single-tracked approach in the first game, where in this area you fight these kinds of enemies, in this area you fight these kinds of enemies. Here you had like robots coming skydiving down from the sky. You had like worms from down under. You had
that
like
were creeping out and back into the ground.
And you even had planes, which I don't remember from the first game.
Little robot planes, and you had opponents that just disappeared and reappeared. And teleported. So the variation. Very large guys too. I mean, come on, this guy at the end, this badass guy.
Yeah, but not even just that. Just you had the legendary mobs from the first game, like special versions of the enemies. You had those in the first game as well, but here in the sequel, they're like 5 times bigger. So every time you actually has to fight one of those, you really feel like it's sort of an accomplishment when you defeat it. And they usually, of course, leave really cool loot.
Yeah, this game is really all about loot again. And I mean, I found myself looking for weapons, running in the direction where the loot is lying, just to be able to get the biggest, newest, most colorful gun. And in contrary to the first iteration of the game, they now actually do look a lot different. So every weapon sort of isn't just different by the number, but different by the look, different by the way it shoots, different.
Just the animations of it, when they reload it, when they use it, when they
when they get stuck while reloading. This is a really cool feature that like bad guns from bad manufacturers, they just don't really work that well. So it just goes like.
That's really cool. Also, what I noticed was that the difficulty was way up compared to the first game. I mean, again, one of the critiques of the first game was that you could pretty much just sit down, blast your way through it without ever really having any trouble. There was some of the later DLC packs, of course, that offered a challenge, but the difficulty in the sequel
Yeah,
seems to have been like tuned way up, and it actually to me makes for a lot better game.
Plus, and this is a big issue about this game, it forces you to play co-op, because you can't really just run away and leave your fellow behind, because then he couldn't revive you, which he can now, and which happened a lot of times in my session, that we like revived each other because the opponents were just too hard to beat.
Yeah, I was actually playing with Nick, who's behind the camera right now, and we were pretty much just like every 2 minutes like asking one another, so are you gonna come revive me because I'm dying here, because the enemies are really nasty.
No, this is because Nick technically can only play the PlayStation 3 and also sucks as well.
That's true, but think about that. So you were satisfied by what you saw today? I
actually were. I mean, it's pretty early version, pretty kind to that we could play it.
Yep.
I mean, they have a lot of time to polish what they are doing now, and even at this stage, it looks, in my eyes, extremely beautiful, and I can dig the idea that the gameplay will work pretty well. So
yeah, and again, I remember.
I'm just curious. I just want to see more levels, more opponents,
more loot.
More loot.
Yeah,
a lot more loot.
Again, one of the first things I remember being said about Borderlands 2 was that they really were focusing on making it much more varied, and I think if anything, we can conclude from what we've seen today is that that's certainly true. I mean, and it totally makes for such a more interesting game, because you really want to see what's around the next corner and what enemies now going to attack you.
Yeah, I mean, plus they mentioned we couldn't really see it because we weren't allowed to take missions by ourselves, but they said they changed the mission gameplay in terms of that it's not like, how did they call it? Fetch and...
I actually experienced that.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, I was... one of the missions we got to try was that we had to free Mordecai's bird, Bloodwing, which some of you might remember from the first game. And midway through the mission, I was actually assigned another mission, where I had, it was just your typical fetch quest, but just the thing that it was mid-mission. I didn't have to go to a board to get it or anything. It was just given to me dynamically. Was something that I think, and I hope, will make for a much faster game than the first game, because again, the first game was very much you just lining up tens of missions, going out, completing them, and going back and getting all the experience. And it made for these not so dynamically ways of leveling up. It was more like, you just got 2 levels or 3 levels, and now it could potentially be much more dynamic.
Yeah, that's true.